Hello everybody and welcome to yet another anime review here today. We're getting straight into this one, fellas, because I know I like to ramble a lot, and in the past reviews, pretty much all of them, I have begun with a lot of rambling and a lot of excess talking, okay? I haven't gotten to the point very fast, so I'm going to skip some of the fluff here, alright? We're reviewing Season 2 of To Love Ru here, but we're not just reviewing that, we're reviewing To Love Ru Darkness Part 1. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how it's split up in terms of seasons, right? Because, like, on High Anime, it just says Season 3, Part 1, right? And then other places, it says, like, it's a whole different season. I mean, it is a different season. It's weird how it works. So anyways, I'm just calling it Season 3, Part 1, or To Love Ru Darkness, Part 1. Anyways, I watched these two, and in the time that I've spent dawdling and not posting this review properly, or rather recording this review because, you know, I actually have gotten around to watching the OVAs that follow Part 1 of Season 3, so that's pretty cool. So I have been progressively watching more. I haven't skipped out on it. So I won't be mentioning the OVAs, only because they're completely inconsequential this time around. So that won't be involved in this, unlike the first. Did I mention that in the first? I don't think I did in the first review. That's right, I didn't, because I watched them after, and it was miserable because I didn't like the Season 1 OVAs that followed. Anyways, let's get straight into this, fellas. So, it's been a little bit. I haven't been doing this. For the past few weeks, I've been meaning to do this, and by few weeks, I mean like 5 weeks. And I only just got around to it today because... Let's see, the first week was like me dragging my feet, and then the next week was kind of like a little bit of that and being busy, and every week that followed was just everything sucked. So, anyways, we're here now, and let's get into it. So we have Season 2 here, and I'm actually going to briefly skim over Season 2, because Season 2, even if you don't like this style of video, I actually covered it in the, what was it? It was the President's Talk About To Love Ru. The video's called To Love Ru is Insane, I believe is the title. I'll have the image up on screen for you guys to see, so you can click on that on the channel. I actually talk about a lot of my thoughts on Season 2 through this by using comedy through two of the presidents, right? And so I use a lot of comedy to describe that and my thoughts on it, and so there's not a lot that I haven't already said in that video regarding Season 2 specifically, so we're going to go through most of these pretty quickly. Also, excuse my congestion. I haven't been congested the whole day, and then suddenly I go to record this, and now I have problems, so I don't know what that's about. So let's get into it. So we have Episode 1 of Season 2. So, Episode 1 and 2, I'm going to pack together as one thing. Matter of fact, I'm going to pack the first 3 episodes of Season 2 together. So we have the bathhouse, okay, part of the episode. I'm going to be describing them based on the parts I remember, okay? The other parts are probably not that important if I don't remember them all that well. So Episode 1, the bathhouse whole fight scene, that's the thing I remember the most about Episode 1 of Season 2. It's very much trying to be like Season 1, but it fails in a lot of the aspects, namely due to the writing of the dialogue, which... I know in To Love Ru, you don't exactly associate this show with, like, masterful dialogue, and to be honest, at no point in the show is the dialogue, like, even near the level of some of the other shows we've talked about on the channel or have watched, right? Like, it's no Kaguya-sama Love is War. But, the dialogue is at least, like, it's a consistent flow of just kind of average, right? Like, maybe the average person couldn't write it, rather because the average person would never think to write it the way that To Love Ru does, but it's not, like, bad either, you know? However, this episode, it seems to fail a lot of what Season 1 did right, because Season 1 was so goofy and ridiculous that you were just like, every episode was going to be something new, and it was always going to be dumber than the last. Episode 1 of Season 2 is just kind of like, they're trying too hard, and they're also trying too hard to reintroduce people to the series, as if you hadn't just watched Season 1 and the OVAs, right? And if you hadn't, let's be real, you did. Okay, this is To Love Ru. Nobody picks this show up mid-season, okay, or middle of the show. Come on! What is this, Stranger Things? No, it's To Love Ru. Nobody picks this up and watches it like it's a Call of Duty game where you pop pop and play, okay? And if they did, they didn't stick around for too long, okay? They maybe watched all of episode 1 and they were out. So, anyways, the dialogue and reintroducing characters, and trust me, they're reintroducing them. The way that they word things, it's very blatant telling, not showing, right? Like, hi, Mikan, you're a great sister. You know, it's like, we know it's his sister. Like, we don't need a reminder, right? Or with, what was it? I think the only characters where it makes a little bit of sense is Momo and Nana, and that's only because they appeared in an OVA first, which, if you know anything about anime OVAs, generally people who are watching the anime don't watch the OVAs because they think the OVAs aren't mandatory, which in this show, they are. It's kind of like how in, I think it was Tonikawa Over the Moon for You, the OVA, there was only one of them, but it was mandatory, because that explains how, What's-Her-Face got her phone, right? Which, like, it's not a huge deal, but it's a detail. Okay, in To Love Ru, you have to watch the OVAs, or at least these ones in particular. And so anyways, with the reintroduction of Momo and Nana, it's kind of confusing, especially because later in the season, they pretend like they introduced them as new characters, and so it feels more like an anthology with how they're running it, which this show is not an anthology, don't think it is. It's just weird how the structure of them being introduced is. It's confusing, okay? The Momo and Nana, their introduction, it's confusing, of like where they began, yeah. Anyways, episode 1, it's not all that, okay? They have the typical, like, beating the crap out of Rito, okay? Rito being the main character. They do the usual antics. It's chaos, okay? If you want a description of Season 1, go check out my Season 1 review on the channel, okay? It's the same thing as Season 1, but a bit worse. Then you get to Episode 2, and it's generally pretty much the exact same thing, except you get a little bit more, you know, it's slightly better. The writing's a little bit better. Okay, then you get to Episode 3, which I think is funny, because I think Episode 3 is rated the worst on IMDb. Yeah, I always mix up the D and the B, and anyways. Episode 3, yeah, I actually enjoyed Episode 3 a bit more than the previous two. Mostly because of the whole part with Yui, okay? I thought that was pretty wholesome. I enjoyed that a lot, alright? Her dynamic with Rito, it progresses at a much more steady and natural pace than other characters, okay? Which, we'll get to the other characters, trust me. This review is not exactly going to be short, even though I'm sort of rushing through each of the episodes without giving much explanation, because I don't explain plot in these reviews for obvious reasons. This is not a replacement of watching the show. Anyways, with Yui, yeah, I think she's interesting to watch. She's not my favorite character, but she is definitely one of the most fleshed out characters in terms of her emotions and even her motivations, right? On the contrary, other characters in this season are kind of like, they're not great. I think Lala, in every season besides Season 1, she is not done very well. Now, in Season 2, she gets her decent screen time like always, right? But in Season 1, she has a certain flair to her, a certain charm that makes her a fun character. In Season 2, it kind of deviates to other characters because it sort of needs to, and because it's a harem, so, like, of course it does. And so she gets a lot of her screen time robbed, and I think that's one of the big problems with having a show with this many love interests and this many people to focus on, is that characters don't get an equal slice of screen time. They kind of get robbed of their screen time, and when you have this many characters, characters like Lala, they get shown out of the spotlight, which is ironic because she's one of the two main characters, right? She's probably the most important character aside from Rito himself, and she's ironically side-casted, okay, after Season 1, which I think is weird. Kind of like, it's like collecting Pokemon, you know, it's like after you catch the shiny, you're no longer interested in it, right? I could also make a joke about real-life application, but I'll just skip over it. This isn't a Super Seducer video. Okay, anyways, we're on Episode 4. The whole part with Yami and the fashion at the beginning of the episode, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. You know, it's like, She doesn't need to be wearing an alien combat dress everywhere she goes, right? Like, you can wear normal clothes and blend in with humans, which, given the town that they're in and how lawless it is, nobody cares. Like, nobody notices that she walks around in a uniform that, you know, it looks like she's dressed up for Halloween, and they see people with wings flying around, and, like, it don't matter, okay? These people are, to say they're NPCs is an understatement, okay? And I'm talking about the background characters in this show. Random people you see walking around in this supposed town or city or whatever they're in, these people are not, like, to say they're not paying attention is, I mean, it's a blind man can see better in front of them than these people can see all around them. There's lasers, there's destruction and mass chaos, and they miss it all. Anyways, what else? Then there's I believe episode 4 is also the reintroduction of Momo and Nana into the show, which, by the way, it was a good reintroduction, but the scene with them and the tail thing, it was weird, man. It was weird. I talk about that one in the video I mentioned before, but yeah, that was probably the most uncomfortable scene to sit through ever. Probably, I counted in the top 5 most uncomfortable things I've ever had to sit through watching something before, right? And most of those uncomfortable things are like when somebody's getting yelled at or screamed at, or like there's a divorce going on in a movie or something, right? Those are uncomfortable. This almost beat those. It was bad. It was uncomfortable in its own way, obviously, because it was, you know, sexual in nature, but it was bad. It was not fun. I would recommend skipping it. Also, what's his face's reaction to it? Sostin? Is that his name? Sostin? I believe I'm saying it right. He hasn't been featured in an episode since early season 2. I forgot his name. He's just not in the show really anymore. It's weird, right? It's like King Deviluke's his lieutenant, right? Him. The one with the giant sword. Okay, anyways. See, episode 5. This one's kind of underwhelming. I think this was the one with the stupid plant thing. Selene. Just so everybody knows, Selene is probably my least favorite character in this show. If you can even call them a character, right? Like, I don't know what constitutes as a character necessarily, but, I mean, they live, they breathe. They're an organic being, which, I mean, inorganic beings are characters. They don't do anything, really. They just kind of run around and cause chaos. They don't talk, they don't... Yeah, they're just sort of a giant plot... Not even giant, a tiny plot device. Okay, as anyways, I think this is the episode where Selene jumped around and sprayed the plant thing, right? And where they get drunk off of Coca-Cola, because... that's possible, which you could make a cocaine joke instead, but they never make it in this show. I think it's just a missed opportunity. But yeah, so Selene jumps around, sprays everybody with a plant, and the plant drives them hog wild, right? And so it's the usual Televeru antics. I don't need to explain the common feature of this show, which is that everything will somehow turn weird within a 20-second duration at most. And so, yeah, it wasn't my favorite episode, but, I mean, it was something. Okay, next episode 6, is the beach episode. It's not a big deal, right? And then episode 7 is, I think it's the one where Yami gets sick with something, but I don't remember what it was. It was a more interesting episode. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't exactly the most revolutionary thing to view, right? Anyways, next up, we got episode 8, which is also kind of underwhelming. Now that I'm looking back at some of the season 2 episodes, I'm realizing most of them aren't that great. I think it's better than season 1, but that's because season 1 felt like it didn't really have anything going on. It sort of felt like SpongeBob, and how you just watch an episode and there wasn't a plot really, or any sort of like overarching thing they're building to. It was just kind of, it is what it is, right? Which, I've said this before, I think, on the previous review, and I'll say it again. If it's not for the gigantic, constant sexual element to the show, it would be a kid's show. It would be. I've watched every other anime, and virtually every other anime that I've watched is probably a million times more mature in its delivery and how it just portrays things. And everything seems like they're talking to somebody who's, a teenager, a young adult at least, okay? This show, it's delivered like it's a kid's show, but it's not because of that singular element, which I think is kind of weird. It's jarring how it works. I actually forget that this isn't a kid's show when I'm watching it. I'm like, that's kind of weird. That's like this cartoon I watched, and then they show something sexual, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is To Love Ru, right? Not the same thing. It's just, it's a weird element to the show, and it makes some of these episodes not feel like they really have a direction to it, which is why episode 9 is also kind of underwhelming, right? Episode 10 of season 2, the whole pollen thing, also not a big fan. It was not well delivered at all. However, the middle of the episode, I think, was pretty interesting. I did enjoy that part of it. I don't remember much about it, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it Risa? Is that her name? I'm trying to think. It's the girl that constantly, for whatever reason, physically harasses everybody in her class, that typically the females, okay? She has like blondish hair. Anyways, I think this was the episode where she got some focus with her and Rito, but I could be mistaken. Okay, then the end of the episode was miserable. That was the whole heart-throbbing email part of the episode, was what they called it. Okay, the whole email thing, that really bothered me. Okay, basically what it was Rito got an email from, from Yui, which... They have phones, they can call each other, they can text. No, they're sending through email. Just don't ask me. Anyways, he gets an email from her, and then he's too tired. And so Momo answers it, or was it Nana? I think it was Nana answers it. And she replies with something back, and she replies with something weird. Then Momo gets involved, and it's Momo, so then it gets weirder, right? Because Momo's kind of a whack job, right? So anyways, they reply, and then Yui gets the wrong idea because, well, she doesn't really get the wrong idea. She gets the right idea because they're sending weird stuff to her through Rito's account, and she doesn't know that it's not Rito, right? And so anyways, by the time Rito looks at it, it's implied that all hell broke loose with it, okay? Which, like, what else did you expect, right? Rito gets the short end of the stick through this whole show. Once we get to season 3, we'll start breaking it down some more. Anyways, season 2, episode 11, this one was really good. This is the one that focuses more on Mikan, which, look, I know I watched a full season of Domestic Girlfriend, okay? But, like, his focus with Mikan is one of the more interesting parts of the show. I'll say that. Mostly because they seem to have a more complex dynamic, while other characters are very flat, not meaning literally, in how they're portrayed, and so they don't have a lot of change or development, right? And so with Mikan, I think it's cool to see a little bit of change in a show where there isn't a whole lot of change, right? It seems like everything's changing and nothing's changing at the same time, right? Anyways, last episode of season 2, the full-blown, he confesses on accident to everybody, then that gives Momo the idea to essentially get everybody in one giant harem relationship, okay? Which, for context, this is the one show I've ever seen where it's called a quote-unquote harem, right? Or harem, however you want to say it. But the actual content of it is that, okay? Well, not like, I would say not the sexual element of it, but like kind of the sexual element of it, okay? So, like, it has the full content of what that entails, alright? And the characters actively work, and by characters I mean just Momo, actively work to make that a reality, right? And so, Rito's under this stupid belief that he's got to obey Japan's laws, right? Like as if he's not heir to the whole galaxy. Well, they say whole universe, but I think that's kind of selling it a little bit too much, right? I mean, that's hardly possible for one empire, okay? It's like, what are you, Mongolia? And so anyways, when it comes to this, he's heir to the whole galaxy, okay? Possibly multiple galaxies. He is basically a Prince of Deviluke, if we're looking at things from a royalty standpoint, right? And so, he don't have to follow Earth rules. He don't have to follow any rules for that matter, okay? And considering this is a monarchy, it's probably not a democracy either, right? It's not like Naboo. And so, it's not like anybody's going to oppose him for something as minute as this, right? You know, it's not like he's blowing up a planet with the Death Star, okay? Which, by the way, King Deviluke threatens to do that in Season 1. So, really, there's nothing he can't or won't be allowed to do. Considering the principal that runs the school in this show, you know, the guy with the Hitler stash, yeah, there's absolutely no reason why he can't just have everyone, okay? Like, he's gotta be stupid in order to think that, right? Which is kind of my big criticism. We'll get to the characters. Actually, matter of fact, let's get to the characters right now before we start on Season 3. My overall rating of Season 2, it's a 7.5 out of 10, okay? It made me enjoy the show a lot more. I was no longer bored watching it, because Season 1 I got bored sometimes, and that's why I dropped it and watched like 7 other shows in between. Possibly, maybe it was 8. I think it was 7. Anyways, Season 2 definitely hooked me, got me interested, and so that's why I watched immediately Season 3 afterwards, right? Which is an accomplishment given the nature of Season 1, which wasn't terrible, but compared to some of the other shows I've watched, it wasn't the best, right? And it has way too much filler, okay? It's like freaking Naruto with how much filler there is. Season 2, 7.5 out of 10. Definitely not the best, but also not the worst thing I've ever seen. Now let's get to the characters, okay? Characters that we should talk about. Season 1, I talk about just about everything worth mentioning with some of the other ones. But I want to talk about Rito and Momo, specifically, okay? Skip Selene, okay? You've heard me rant about the plant thing enough. It bothers me. It's a random plot tool. It's not even a plot tool. It's just there to annoy you, okay? You can skip over some of the randos, okay? Let's focus on Momo and Rito. So, let's start with Rito. Rito has progressively, he's actually done kind of the opposite as some of the other characters in this show. He has somehow become more annoying than he was at the beginning of the show. At the beginning of the show, you're like, okay, a regular human would react in the way he's reacting to most things. However, as the show goes on and he fully well knows everything, right? This is one of those, like, you should know better by now kind of scenarios. And this is my problem with Nishikata and Teasing Master Takagi, was that after years, after literally every day spent with individuals that he knows, he's still surprised by things. What are you surprised about? This is your everyday life. You know everything that's going to happen. You know his reaction to Lala's inventions. He knows what they're going to do. That's what his reaction should be to everything that happens, if it isn't like some new alien coming down and blowing stuff up or mind controlling someone or doing whatever the weird stuff they do in this show is, right? But when it comes to the average thing he sees, right, like, for example, nudity, or a character trying to, do something weird like Momo does literally every episode, right? Or he accidentally sees something he's not supposed to see, or trips and falls and grabs onto somebody, which he does literally every episode, okay? He knows this. All the characters know this, which this kind of leads to a dual problem. Rito's end, and the end of the person who is assaulting him, essentially. On the other person's end, they know he does this. And more specifically, they know 99% of the time it's not on purpose, okay? Rito is like Jar Jar Binks, except his bad luck is virtually never in his favor. And so he trips, he falls, he stumbles, and does stupid stuff, right? Or, in some cases, such as in Season 2's Episode 1 Bathhouse Fight, he's being mind-controlled. Okay, if he's being mind-controlled, alright, you don't have to beat him like it's Caleb City, okay? Instead, what you should be doing is, okay, we know he's being mind-controlled, who's mind-controlling him? Alright, because, like, let's take this from the standpoint of the characters. From the viewer's standpoint, this is to love Rue. Nobody's going to die at random, okay? It's not supernatural. But from the character's standpoint, you have aliens that are threatening the lives of every person you know. What is your reaction to this? Is it A, beat on Rito for some reason, or is it B, find the alien creature mind-controlling your friends and eliminate them, or at least do something to where they're no longer a threat? And so anyways, they choose letter A, or number 1, or whatever you want to call it, and beat the crap out of Rito. Why? He's being mind-controlled. I don't know. He does weird stuff while he's mind-controlled. Which, by the way, he's still conscious while this is happening. He's actually still speaking and protesting what his body's doing during this, and they still beat him up. So this isn't even like he's out of his mind and, you know, there's swirls in his eyes, right? This is just straight conscious battery for no reason, okay? Then there's other moments too, right? Like Yui commonly slaps him in the face, or Haruna slaps him in the face. And one thing is, they rarely ever blame the person who is responsible. Now, one thing I do like about this is that in Season 2, even though Rito doesn't seem to ever learn, the other characters stop blaming him as much, because they know he does this, right? So like in Season 1, consistently, you knew he was going to get beat every single time. And so there was like a 95% chance they would blame Rito, and a very rare percent of a chance that they wouldn't, and they would either blame nobody, or they would blame the person who is actually responsible. In Season 2, it's more like a 50-50, right? So like, either they beat the crap out of Rito, kind of like they do early on, or later on, they're kind of like, hey, that was your fault. What the heck are you doing, right? Like, Rito's just standing there, okay? And so it's one of those, like, look at what he's doing sort of thing, where you have to pay attention, and the characters sometimes aren't and sometimes are. Then in Season 3, this gets a lot better, and so it's more like a 90% of the time they don't blame him, because they all know he does it. And so you gotta get some of the more side characters that blame him for it, you know, like Saki, for example, right? Because she doesn't spend enough time with Rito to where she would actually know that he just does that. Well, she does. She just hasn't reached the point of apathy yet, right? And so anyways, now let's talk about Rito's end. Rito's end is the most frustrating because with a person in his scenario, I'm not going to go into any details here, but okay, he's got everybody in the world tossing themselves at him. Access to infinite resources, infinite technology, everything. He's got aliens interacting with him on a daily basis. He can learn anything he wants. He can access anything he wants. Any amount of money, power, technology. He could cure cancer that day. Okay? He could do it. He could have everyone he knows do it. Everything around him is basically handed to him, but his response to it is grossly inappropriate. And by inappropriate, I don't mean sexual in nature. In fact, it's the total opposite. His reaction to it is to constantly push things away. And this is why I always say Rito feels like he belongs in a different show. Is because Rito is your typical, wait, it's not what it looks like kind of anime main character. He's not shy or nerdy. He's a weird middle ground. He's the middle ground between awkward stammering and stumbling and stuttering, you know, like, wait, hang on, it's not, and then he doesn't explain what's going on. He doesn't lead with an explanation. It's like he wants to be hit by one of them, you know, which, once again, not in a sexual way, even though realistically, in his scenario, it would be, in every case, okay? At this point, all the characters are practically begging him to be in that case, and to do that, and he won't. Why won't he? I don't know. And at this point, this is mostly the case with Season 3. I'm just explaining it a little early, because I'm blending these two together. With the case of Season 3, his interactions with Momo, it becomes very clear Rito has a more... I'd say he's pretty selfish. And selfishness is definitely not a fun quality to watch without a purpose. I always think of like Light Yagami as the basis for a character that does things wrong. Okay? However, Light is interesting because you know he's a villain, and everything he does serves himself as a villain, right? You're never thinking like, wow, Light's such a good person, you know, when you're watching Death Note. In the case of Rito, he has a weird push and pull effect, where you're kind of rooting for him, but you're also not really sure what you're rooting for, because in Rito's mind, he doesn't accept anything that's going on. And so I say it's selfishness, because at a certain point, it becomes harmful when somebody doesn't acknowledge anybody's emotions around them, and they just go off into La La Land, pun intended, okay? And so, it reminds me of, like, Origairu, and how Hikigaya would just kind of, he just doesn't care what anybody else is thinking, and so it causes pain to everybody, and we're not going to get into the depressing reality of Origairu, right? But in this show's case, Rito is constantly pushing people away. He does it to everyone, okay? And so, eventually it becomes frustrating for the audience, not just because you have a bunch of nerdy kids that are watching this show and going, bro, if that were me in this case, I wouldn't hold back. You know, it's like, okay, we know that, alright? But it does reach a point to where it gets annoying. It's not even a will they, won't they, it's a one-sided thing, and he's the asexual, okay? He has zero attraction to anybody in his circumstance. And at a certain point, it becomes leading people on. And that's what he's doing. He's leading literally over 10 people on at the same time, okay? Which is beyond scummy. And so he's got to make a decision at some point. Eventually, he's got to do something, right? And he won't. He won't do anything under any circumstance. And he doesn't have to do something full-blown obnoxious at any point if he doesn't want to. But he has this, he just doesn't, he kind of closes off anytime something happens. He locks up. He doesn't resist. He doesn't verbally say, no, I don't do this, okay? He doesn't say anything of rejection, and he doesn't do the opposite either. He doesn't accept or reject. He just locks up like rock, okay? And it's annoying because it's like a little kid. And then that gets, you know, weird, because then it feels like every other character is encroaching in on his domain mentally, and he's over here chasing butterflies in his brain like a dog, which we're not even going to get into Marone, okay? Like I said in the one video where I talked about Televeru Season 2, Marone is the P. Diddy of dogs, of fictional dogs. I'm just saying, okay? That's Haruna's dog. That thing is weird. And so anyways, that's my problem with Rito, and that problem might just get worse. It depends on how Season 3 Part 2 goes. But it's annoying. Yeah, it really gets on my nerves, and don't worry, it'll get worse. Now we're on Season 3. I'm going to talk a lot. We got 2 whole seasons of stuff to get through. Season 1, Episode 1. Lala gets a bit of an appearance here. However, kind of a funny thing, Momo becomes sort of the secondary main character. By the way, I didn't talk about Momo. Momo is the most peak character in the show. Easily my favorite, okay? She knows what shows she's in. She leads every event that happens in this show. She directs everything in the right direction that everybody is waiting for it to be in. She is essentially kind of a vessel for the audience, but she's also more. She constantly defends Rito, defends other characters, right? Both verbally and physically in combat. She sets things up to go the way the audience wants, even if it doesn't go that way, because Rito is a little something I'm not going to say, okay? And so, Momo is kind of the perfect character for this kind of show. And most importantly, she's dynamic. She has different qualities that make her an interesting character that definitely other characters don't have, right? And so she has different elements that just make her more entertaining as well, right? And then I think the number one detail that I think is the most positive when it comes to Momo is that when it comes to her and Rito, she has the most chemistry with him. Easily. Now, I'm not going to go... Actually, I will go into this. So, let's go over a little lesson real quick, fellas. This is a review. I'm gonna talk a lot, so get ready here, okay? What we're seeing in the show is polygamy, right? Plain and simple, it's polygamy. When it comes to polygamy, there's a certain dynamic that emerges when it is more than 3 people, Okay, so 3 people, usually in the context we're looking at here, would be like 2 women and 1 man. Okay, so in that context, it's sort of split 50-50, right? Then when you get more than those 3 people, now you get a different kind of situation, right? So if you look at like certain tribes across the world, this isn't as common nowadays, but like look at the 1800s, for example, and look at like tribes in Africa, and then some groups in the Middle East did this, but not as commonly, right? In other parts of the world as well, they had this sort of structure. And so it works in its own way, but they have ways to make it work, right? And so, anyways, I'm not sure if you guys have ever read Things Fall Apart, but that's included in that book, right? I haven't read that in years, but anyways. When it comes to this sort of thing, you have more than 3 people. Well, now suddenly you can't split affection 50-50, right? This can't go 2 ways to 2 people, because now there's 3 people you have to appeal to. So, Rito, because he's the male in this scenario, right, and this is polygamy, and not a scenario where it's flipped, where there's multiple men and 1 woman, right? Which, I think there's another anime for that, but whatever. Anyways, because of his position, he is, I'm going to use very almost memeable terms here, okay? He's sort of, think of him like the alpha in this scenario, okay? He is the central figure of everybody's affection. Now look at the women that are surrounding him. Let's take it as now there are just 3 of them, all right? And this will get worse as there are more of them. The 3 of them cannot receive his time and affection equally, okay? And so eventually what you get is that one of them will end up being the preferred wife, and they will take that position as sort of the alpha wife, all right? Sounds real stupid, okay? But we're cartooning this for us to better understand what I'm talking about here. Then the other 2 become lower in their positions. As you get more people in this same relationship, they will decrease in their individual value, okay? Because now he's no longer splitting his affection and time equally. He physically can't, okay? And, you know, it's not like he's going to make a robot that'll do the same thing as him, because then it's on him, right? And so when you have this kind of dynamic that is being created here, it's impossible to structure properly. So in the context of the show, Lala is treated as if she is the central partner figure, her and Haruna. However, if you look at it, realistically, Momo should be the central partner figure. She has the most chemistry, spends the most time with him, defends him actively in every way possible, okay? Changes his life the most for the better, okay? And does a million other things that push him in the right direction. Meanwhile, Lala is, by the terms of Season 3, is almost absent, okay? She appears, but doesn't really have that important of a role. Then Nana is obviously not all that interested. She is interested, but not directly, okay? Not actively. It's not so much as Momo, obviously. Okay, then you have the other characters. And the other characters, they are pursuing Rito, but they are not as close. And the problem is, I think that's created, is that Rito doesn't acknowledge this at all, okay? And I don't think the show even acknowledges this, because even as the way Momo puts it, she's fine with being kind of a secondary figure, which I think is inaccurate given her position here, but that's just my opinion, right? And so anyways, I think she's one of the best characters. Actually, she's the best character in the show, and she makes the show much better just by being present. And so in Season 3, Part 1, she is basically the main character. And so there's a heavy focus on her, and I think that's pretty cool. Anyways, Episode 2, which is Doubt and Dish, is the title of it. We were introduced in Episode 1, actually, to this character called May. Or I believe, maybe it was Episode 2 that she was introduced. This character called May, okay? Which, she's a pretty interesting character. I think, is it May or Mai? I think it's May. Okay, she's the one with the red hair, right? She is a bioweapon similar to Yami, except she is sent there to kill Rito, alright? Similar to how Yami was before. And she's also sent there to convince Yami to change back to being, you know, a galaxy-known assassin, alright? So, like off-brand Boba Fett. And so, anyways, this becomes the focus. May starts to loom further into the plot, and the characters get to know her slightly better. And then, what is it? I think Momo ends up saving Yami from some sort of scenario in this episode, or maybe that was a later episode. Anyways, then you get the next couple of episodes, which get some more development for Mei, and they also get some more development for Yami and Momo over time, okay? So I'm not going to go into detail for all the development, right? So they get closer to Rito's sort of the main focus, but you also learn more about Mei and Yami's backstory, which becomes sort of a central focus later in the season. Most specifically, you get more on Momo's whole harem plan, alright? See, so she's constantly noting people to add to it, like their Pokemon, right? So she's like, okay, Lala's already included. Nana's included, I'm included. Alright, who else are we going to get here? Mikan, her too. Mei, sure thing, add her too. Who else? Saki? I'll keep that one in mind, right? So, that kind of idea. Anyways, we'll progress a little bit forward here. Episode 5, definitely a filler episode. I know this is To Love Ru, so you could argue basically all episodes are filler, somehow. But, it's not really all that important. Then you get to episode 6, which... Oh boy, okay, so, yeah, the Republican Party, they won't be too happy with this one. So, Rito gets transformed into a woman by, what is it, one of Lala's gadgets. Now, this actually happened before. It happened in the first OVA after Season 1. However, it happens again here, or it happens last episode at the very end, and then transitions into this episode. It was... To say it was disturbing is an understatement. They did some bad things to Rito at the beginning of this episode. Oh boy, yeah, if you look up a description of the episode, you can't even get it filtered down from that. It's the whole episode was just... It's kind of like that one episode in The Boys that's really disturbing, which is all of them, but... you probably know which one I'm talking about, right? I think it was in Season 3, right? Which was, yeah, I'm just not gonna name it, right? Anyways, next episode, we get a lot of information on Yami's backstory, which was really interesting, and I really enjoyed that. So I thought that was cool. It was definitely more leaning into the sci-fi element of the show, right? So it's, obviously, she's a clone of another person, and then she was raised under that scientist, in order to... I don't know what the initial purpose was. I think she was still designed as a bioweapon, but the scientist that was taking care of her did not know that. And so anyways, the scientist, she was chased off, and then Yami was not abducted, but kind of kept, and then used as a weapon up until the beginning of not beginning, but sort of mid-season 1 when she was introduced in the show and became good and yada yada, right? Episode 8 is... What was this episode again? Let's see. Not a lot, if I recall. Right! That is another thing. So, Rune and Ren split into two different people, right? So, if you don't remember, Rune, the whole Mimose species, they flip their gender when they sneeze. Okay? It's weird. I don't know. I didn't design it. And so, anyways, I think it was this episode 8, she ends up splitting into two separate people. So Ren and Rune are now individual parts. So that answers the whole, like, well, what happens if Rito's with Rune, right? Like, and then it just flips to a guy, and now it's weird, or it's weird for him. Well, that problem's been solved. Now, don't ask me where they got the biomass or any of the energy needed to split into two people that are both fully grown, have their own working nervous system and brain, and all their memories are intact. And bro, don't ask me. I'm just here to talk, okay? It happened. That's all there is to it. Yeah, so they're separate characters now, so problem solved. Moving on. Let's see. Yami and Mei get a lot more backstory. You kind of figure out Yami, she lived sort of an SCP kind of life, where she was in a facility her whole life, and then, grew up and kind of just, she felt like she was abandoned by the figure she saw as both a mother and a sister, right? Which, fun fact, are these all? So it's episode 8, episode 9, and episode 10 are all top rated. Oh, and the final episode 12, for the season. So yeah, people definitely enjoyed these episodes a lot. So episode 10 is basically the same thing. The lady's name is Tirju, I believe her name is. Tirju? I think that's her name, right? I'm looking at her name right now, but I'm not exactly sure if that's how you pronounce it. Anyways, then she gets brought into the school as a teacher, which you can probably see where this is coming, right? Or where this is going. So, anyways, Momo's like, I might add her in on the plan, too, which is weird, right? In multiple different ways. But this is Rito we're talking about, so at this point, who cares? Then, episode 11, let's see, Yami runs into Tirju, and they end up not having a heart-to-heart, but they have a long ways to go, right? They reunite with each other, so there's that. Then, Mei is revealed to everyone that she is an assassin here to basically convert Yami back to, I guess, the dark side, right? Back to her master, which her master's name's Nemesis, I'm almost positive. So that's interesting. Probably took the name from Resident Evil 3, but it's whatever. And then there's this like mini fight scene, and then the usual Telovru stuff that happens. And now we're moving on to the last episode of Season 3. Which, by the way, on IMDb, it says Season 1 of Telovru Darkness, because they classify them as, I guess, two separate things, but, like, it's the same show. I'm just going to call it Season 3. Then, let's see. Last episode, Momo's determined to make her plan work, and basically she kind of inquires more with Rito into who he's focused on. Which, by the way, I just remembered, last episode has this essentially Discord moderator fan club of Momo that constantly follows her around, guards her, pretty much the simp, like, Twitch streamer kind of club. Okay, like the I donated $17 to you, therefore you should marry me kind of crowd, right? So, like, she gets a bunch of those surrounding her. These people are lunatics, so Rito has trouble interacting with her. Or rather, Momo has trouble interacting with Rito, because Rito's oblivious. And so they figure that out temporarily. Then, Momo gets them in, a tight corridor, essentially. They get really close to kissing. But they don't. Now, Momo envisions a whole scenario in which they do a bunch of stuff, but Rito, nah. In real life, he's just sitting there, whimpering, quivering like a coward. I feel like I'm the Green Goblin talking to him, right? He is a coward. So nothing happens, that's resolved, and Momo is essentially determined to make things work. And that's where the season ends. So, saying it out loud, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot that happens. It's one of those shows you gotta watch yourself, or don't. I mean, it's definitely not for everyone. However, I will say Season 3, okay, or Telovru Darkness Season 1, if you want to put it that way, is, I would say, probably an 8.5 out of 10, right? It's pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot. Does it succeed in what it's supposed to succeed in? Mostly. But it's lacking in some categories. Is it entertaining? Yes, it's very entertaining. Much more entertaining than the previous seasons. It has a legitimate story. It has some sad elements that blend into it, which is new for Telovru. And it also shines a spotlight on Momo, which is completely a plus. And by the way, she improves every single episode, right? It's like having Morgan Freeman in a movie. It makes it better by her simply being present. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Season 2 and Season 3 Part 1 of Telovru. Now, as much as I would like to continue on Rascal Does Not Dream or start a new anime or something like that, I guess I'm determined to finish Telovru. So, that means I'm going to have to start up on Part 2 of Season 3, then watch the movie, and then the show's over. I can't tell whether I should be sad about that, happy because I can start watching other stuff instead, or how to feel. It's kind of bittersweet, right? The characters will be here in my heart in this review on YouTube that's going to be archived and probably can't be deleted from anybody's memory. And it will also probably be possible in Gmod to have a couple of random player models running around with guns and shooting stuff. So, Yeah, I'm thinking of Left 4 Dead. There's only one player model on Gmod for Televeru. I keep track of this stuff. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you guys have seen the show and you want to comment, tell me what you thought about the seasons, go right ahead. If you think I'm totally wrong about something and I'm being a complete and utter idiot, go ahead and say that. But don't say it like that. I would rather it not be extremely rude for no apparent reason. If you agree with something I said, say that too. That's all I've got for today, fellas. This review is much longer than I intended, but that's because it is quite literally covering 2 whole seasons of a show. It's 2 review videos blended in one, and somehow it's just barely longer than some of the ones that are only 1 season. So there's that. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, a comment, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic life. Goodbye, everyone.